Welcome to Nuance Live and happy Friday. Hope y'all feel alive. Hope you got great plans for the weekend. I have to admit, I am really tired. I'm actually going to go on vacation to Japan in a week. So I'm so excited for that because pretty much for the last 40 days, I've been making a video every single day. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've been in your face a lot and I'm honestly kind of burnt out. But I want to finish through on my commitment to finishing this, and Japan is my finish line. So I am happy to be with you here today, and I have really been enjoying doing these streams because there's something about actually talking to all of you guys live that feels different than me sitting on my phone and recording a video. Even though you guys are not here in the room with me, it just feels a lot more present. So thank you to all of you who watch live, and thank you to those of you who watch the recording, because I get that not everyone can watch at 1 p.m. Pacific in the middle of a workday, but I have a special spot in my heart for people who come to watch Nuance Live. Okay, so what's happening today? It's a continuation of the Trump tariffs and all the discussions about what China has done in response and what Vietnam and Canada and Mexico. And I'm going to break some of that down quickly. Not much has actually changed since yesterday. What's changed, though, is the level of confusion and chaos around the moves that Trump is making. And everyone's got a hot take. Everyone now has an economics PhD and is super confident they know exactly what will happen with tariffs. So we'll dive into that a little bit before we get to the main topic today, which is actually not going to be explicitly political in nature. It's going to be about another influencer. His name is Russell Brand. Many of you have heard of him, but Russell is a cultural and political commentator who used to be more aligned with the left and now is more aligned with the political right. And he just got accused of rape. And we're going to talk about that because this is not so much about Russell's specific situation. And he got accused, not actually charged yet. So he hasn't actually been convicted, but about the larger trend of men who are critical of leftist governments somehow getting accused of having raped someone 10 to 20 years ago. And I want to speak about this because it's a troubling trend when we look at this, what I view as an assault on masculinity that's been going on for the last several years. And of course, we need to protect women from rape, but we also need to make sure that men are not getting abused in this culture where we're trying to be protecting women by men getting accused of things that they didn't do. And I don't know what Russell did or did not do, but I have noticed a trend here, and I want to give you some of my long-form thoughts on that. So first, let's give a quick recap of what has happened in the last 72 hours around Trump's tariffs. So Wednesday, Trump announced the tariffs that he's going to be imposing on other nations that have tariffs on us. And these are what he's positioning as reciprocal tariffs. Now, for those of you who don't know, here's a little bit of a history lesson. We have not always had income taxes in the United States of America. The income taxes that we experience and enjoy today came around in 1913. Prior to that, the U.S. was funded primarily from tariffs, which meant that basically it was a consumption tax that we funded the government off of. But in 1913, that was around the time of World War I. And during World War I, we needed more money. So we started to impose an income tax. And I imagine at the time it was supposed to be something that was temporary, but it persisted because after World War I, well, there's the European reconstruction effort. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to start imposing tariffs because you kind of need a lot of trade to be happening in order to tax that trade and fund your domestic government. Then after the Reconstruction, there was the Great Depression in the 1930s. And then after the Great Depression in the 30s, we had another World War in the 40s. And after that World War, we had another reconstruction effort of Europe. And the US was trying to help Europe with that reconstruction effort with the Marshall Plan. And Japan was getting reconstructed. And essentially, there wasn't a great time to start reintroducing tariffs as a primary economic funding mechanism. So what happened over time is we just became used to funding the nation off of an income tax, and our government expanded. One of the biggest expansion efforts was FDR, the New Deal, and public works. And the government became bigger and more expensive and more all-encompassing in people's lives, whereas the ability to fund the government became more and more dependent on the income tax. So what does that mean? How is that relevant to today? Well, after the 1950s, America's tariff rate started to become the lowest tariff rate in the world. And other countries had higher tariffs than America. There's something called the GATT, and the name of it escapes me, but that happened in the late 1950s. And after that, US tariffs became some of the lowest in the world. So for decades now, about 65 years, we've had higher tariffs on other countries than other countries have had on us. So there's actually a really great interview with Howard Lutnick that was done by the guys at the All In podcast that I invite you to check out. But if you don't want to go through a whole 2-hour conversation, I have a video on my YouTube where I break down tariffs and the larger economic policy that the U.S. government is, well, not U.S. government entirely, because a lot of them are not in lockstep with Trump, but the Trump administration is trying to bring back or impose in order to bring back American manufacturing, in order to close our deficit, in order to make America more sovereign from a supply line standpoint. Because when you think about it, we're making a lot of goods abroad, right? We make a lot of the drones that we use now come from China. About 75 to 80% of the drones that we use come from China. So there's a lot of things that the Trump administration is trying in addition to tariffs. But to simplify things, basically, we used to fund the country off of tariffs. We stopped doing that and started doing the income tax instead. Our tariff rates were higher than other countries had on us, and they're trying to level the playing field, make tariffs something that we rely on more rather than income tax. One of the things that they're trying to do is set up conditions such that we don't even need to have an income tax under 150K, which would be really exciting. I mean, personally, I would love to just get taxed less. And even if goods are more expensive, I personally would love to have the ability to decide when I pay taxes rather than it having be the something that I have to do every time April 15th comes around and the IRS is playing the stupid game with me where I have to document everything. And if I don't document everything perfectly at the right time, then I can get fined. I think it's awful. So I would love to get rid of the income tax. And that's one of the things that's only possible if we reshore a lot of American businesses. We bring back the ability to levy full taxes on American businesses because they're manufacturing here in the United States. We have tariffs to do that, so we don't need the income tax. And we also do things like just make American business more robust by lowering energy costs and a whole bunch of things that you can check out in the video. So where does that leave us? So in the last 72 hours, there's been a flurry of activity. Trump claims that every nation, quote unquote, has called him trying to negotiate the tariffs. Now, I'm sure he's being hyperbolic there, and I doubt every country has done that. And in fact, some countries like China just straight up levied a retaliatory tariff on us. But it does look like Israel has removed the tariffs that they had on the United States. And as of today, Vietnam has made serious indications that they want to do business with the United States. They want to get the tariffs to a point where we have 0% tariffs and actually have free trade between us and Vietnam. So we'll see how much of this pans out, right? And look, ultimately, I made a short form video where I essentially said, look, I'm not a macroeconomics expert. I imagine 99% of you guys watching the stream are not macroeconomics experts either. What I see a lot going on right now is people giving very confident takes, and I don't even know how they can be so confident about their prognostications about where the economy is going. Genuinely, I'm like, how are you guys so confident that you, A, know what tariffs will do, and B, see the whole picture and understand exactly how much tariffs will affect that? Because people will say things like, oh, well, we tried the Smoot-Hawley tariffs back earlier in the 20th century, and that didn't work out so well. Well, here's the thing. When people are talking about tariffs, they're often just saying, well, this is just a consumption or sales tax on American consumers. And yes, that is true if we evaluate tariffs in isolation. They are absolutely 100% a consumption/sales tax. However, you can't just look at one chess piece. You need to look at the whole board. So let's say your bishop is tariffs. Well, what are your pawns? What are your rooks? What are the other parts of the strategy that you're employing to get your overarching goal? And how effective are those at getting your actual goals? Right? So there's the first order consequence of, yes, certain goods are going to be more expensive, but then there are also the second order consequences, right? The second order consequences might be that Mexico sends 10,000 troops from the Mexican National Guard to the US border to stop the flow of fentanyl over the southern border and killing 70,000 Americans a year. That is something that's happened. The second order effect might be that Honda decides to produce the next Honda Civic here in Indiana rather than in Mexico. Also something that it looks like is going to be happening. A second order effect might be that Apple is deciding to build factories here in America and pledge to commit 20,000 new jobs going to Americans here. That's also something that's happened. Another second order effect might be that Taiwan Semiconductor, which makes the majority of the chips that are used by the world, not just America, and those chips are used in AI, those chips are used in military technology, might be building 3 to 5 factories here in the US and announcing over $100 billion of investment in the US. That's happening too. So the reason I say this is because looking at tariffs and saying, well, tariffs cause consumption tax and consumption tax is bad is a very myopic and overly reductive view of what's happening. Part of what's happening is, yes, there are going to be tariffs that are imposed just to raise revenue. Part of what's happening is we're putting reciprocal tariffs up and we're trying to influence other nations to lower their tariff rates to 0. And part of what's happening is we just want to bring certain industries back to America because it's important that we have more made in America and less made in China. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that 70 to 80% of our drones, at least in the commercial industry, the numbers for the military are classified, but at least in the commercial drone industry, 80% of those are made in China that we use in the US. What does that mean? Well, the Ukraine-Russia war has been the first war where drones were a major part of the warfare. And that's a forecast of things to come, because increasingly war is going to be less about men on the ground and more about drones in the sky. So if 80% of our drones are coming from China, you see where I'm going with this, right? And our biggest political rival is China. It's not Russia, it's China for sure. And we're postured for a conflict over Taiwan because Taiwan is economically and militarily important to the US. Yeah, probably makes sense to make sure that we're not reliant on China for the future of what we would need in war. It's a terrifying reality. And that's on top of other reliances that we have on China, like for rare earth minerals or rare earth elements. Or the fact that, hey, if Taiwan Semiconductor is making more of their factories here and producing more of the semiconductors and chips here, then that actually means that the likelihood of us even needing to go to war theoretically goes down. Because I know people say, oh, we stand. It's just like Ukraine. We stand with the next narrative is going to be we stand with Taiwan and it's about democracy. No, it's not. It's really not. Okay. If China invaded Malaysia, I don't think America would get involved. If China invaded Taiwan, we would be pressured to get involved because we are reliant on Taiwan for a critical piece of infrastructure right now. And that's just the language of power. It's not nice. Be nice if this is just about morality and we didn't have any nation invading others, but we need to be realistic. So yeah, we do need an executive branch that is making America more independent. We've gone very far in the globalist direction. It's time to recorrect things a bit more in the nationalist direction. And just from like a perspective of not even fairness. I mean, it's not even fairness because I understand why Canada and Mexico and China and Vietnam and India and all these places have tariffs. Like, they're looking out for their own people. That makes perfect sense. I think they're doing exactly what every government should do for its people. But somewhere along the line in the last 65 years, American leaders stopped looking out for America. And on a personal level, I'm just glad to see Trump trying to bring the spirit of, hey, in America, we're America first, back to the culture. I think that's really healthy. So we'll see how things look in a year, honestly. Like, I personally don't want to be talking about tariffs every day because I think it's pointless to look at every single chess move. Like, imagine if you were watching a match between Gary Kasparov and, I don't know, some other chess grandmaster, and you were freaking out every time a pawn was moved. You were freaking out every time someone took a chess piece. You were freaking out every time there was a check. Like, wouldn't that be silly? Is it fun to evaluate every move? Of course. Is it important to make sure that every move is aligned with a strategy and not just random movements on the board? Yeah. But unless it's actually your job to pontificate on this stuff, it's probably best not to watch the news every day and get fret over tariffs. And here's the sobering reality, guys. We are a nation that has $2 trillion deficit, nearing $37 trillion debt. If we do not get a handle on this, a recession is going to be the least of our worries. We are going to enter a second Great Depression. Our interest rate payment on our debt is $1.2 trillion a year. That is higher than the budget for the Pentagon. That's how much we're paying. To make this personal for you, imagine you had a credit card where the amount that you spend, like imagine your income is less than your expenses, and the amount that you pay in interest is half of that gap between your income and expenses, and you're paying that every single year. Eventually, you're going to go bankrupt, and that's the trajectory that America's on. So for all these people who are so confident because of the economics PhD that they just got in the last 2 months from Internet University, if you're so confident that this is the wrong strategy, please detail your comprehensive strategy for how we get America back on track and away from bankruptcy. Because I have not heard an alternative plan. I do know what Trump's plan is. And I think they could do a much better job of messaging that in a holistic fashion, because it's coming out piecemeal. And unless you're, someone like me who's constantly on X and looking for these interviews and listening to podcasts, I don't know how you would even know the whole strategy. So I think the two biggest criticisms I have of the Trump administration are their messaging is like, it could be so much better, so much more comprehensive and nuanced and less combative. So that's one of their Achilles heels. And I think some of the civil rights stuff, like the way that they're going about some of these deportations, I think could be better and more transparent to the extent that they're going to be messaging about it publicly. I think they need to show the public more proof. And that said, I think from a policy standpoint, they're right on target. So if you have a better comprehensive plan for handling our $2 trillion deficit, our $37 trillion debt, our eroding manufacturing industry, and our reliance on China for critical infrastructure, please be my guest, offer that plan. And until then, I don't want to hear from just people who are critics. I want to hear from creators. So that's it for that. What we're going to do before we get to the Russell Brand stuff, because this was the little amuse-bouche before the entree, I'm going to go check out the chat, see if there's any comments from subscribers. So if you're an Instagram subscriber, YouTube member, or X subscriber, thank you. I'm going to say that every time. If you guys have been watching me consistently, maybe you're getting tired of me thanking them, but I have infinite gratitude. So I'm going to keep on giving my gratitude for you, because you are literally enabling this new chapter of my life that I'm on. And yeah, I just appreciate that you would contribute money to this message. So thank you, because it's not sustainable without y'all. So if you are one of those people, here's the deal. If you go to the sub tab, if you go to my profile on X, there's a sub tab where I have threads where I list, hey, ask here if you have any questions for Nuance Live. That's the best way to get my attention. If you're in the chat, I have a bunch of subscribers. I don't know who everyone is, so it's hard for me to track the different questions, and I can't see all of the chat at once. I am going to read a question from someone who DM'd me. That is not my preferred way of interacting with questions, to be honest. I'd much rather you go into the thread. It's much easier for me to manage. But sometimes I miss things, and if I miss something, I definitely want you to DM me if you're a subscriber, so that I don't miss your question. So we're going to get to one of those. First, I'm going to go scan the chat, though. Let's see here. Welcome, my Facebook fam, my YouTube people, my X gang. Love that so many people are here. Thanks for being with me. Yes, Aurora says we need to get out of debt. Yeah, we do. Like, if you go bankrupt, that hurts your credit score, right? If America goes bankrupt, that hurts the US's credit score. And if the US's credit score gets hurt, our money is worth less, people stop investing in the US, it gets really bad really fast. And I think, and by the way, like every president has been inflating the debt. Like no one has actually made a serious effort to get a handle on this. And Trump in his first term, he inflated the debt too. So just be clear, like he's no angel on this, but he's the first person, as far as I can see, who's actually willing to bear short-term pain for long-term gain. That's what adults need to do. There's no situation here where it's all upside and there's no pain. But the hope is that if we bear the pain now, there's much less pain later. That's the hope. So it would be dishonest to say, yeah, life is not going to get harder for instance, the middle class. Like I'm middle class and working class people are going to be hurt. Like, yeah, there's going to be pain. And what they're trying to do is stick the landing so that there's not so much pain. We don't enter a recession and we also avoid bankruptcy and a Great Depression. So that's the idea. And yeah, we need adults to make hard decisions. And I haven't seen the Democrats presenting an alternative plan. I just see a bunch of complaining. So, yep, well said. Yep. Let's see. There's a Donna says we are going bankrupt. People don't seem to understand that. Yeah, they really don't. They really don't. Well, and I think it's, people don't pay attention closely. I get it. Most people are not tracking this stuff closely. Like I get that y'all in the chat, tend to attract an educated, intellectual, patriotic audience who's paying attention to this stuff. And that's why I love you guys. The majority of people, they're not paying attention to this. They're just trying to get from day one to day two, put food on the table, get their kids to school. And I get it. Like, I don't think politics is there to be your life. And at the same time, I wish that people who see problems with Trump's approach could also see the bigger problems that he's trying to solve and see that the people who are just pointing out the problems with his approach are not presenting alternative solutions. And it is a general heuristic. If someone only presents problems and not solutions, they're probably not a leader. They're a critic. Okay, let's see more comments here. Andy says, enjoy your point of view. Thank you. Appreciate it. Matthew Thurman says, love it. Appreciate you too. Appreciate you, Aurora. Thank you for the kind comment. Okay. So now I'm going to read a comment from a subscriber. Let's get it on screen here. Well, you guys are not going to see it on screen. I'm going to read it out to you though. Again, if you are a subscriber, I prioritize answering your questions. And you can do that. You can ask the questions. You can actually just like reply. Like if you go to my X profile while I'm live, it shows up as like a post. You can just message on the post as well. And that's a good way to get my attention. All right. Okay. So I'm just looking for. Oh my God. Yeah, this is why I don't love DMs. It's so hard to get through all this. But I do see all these loving messages. Thank you. Lizzie Liz, I see you. Great. Okay. So I'm going to say what the question is while I look for it, because I want to shout out the person who asked it specifically, because it was a good question. But essentially the question was, hey, like, how should we regard people like, for example, Rand Paul, who I believe he's a senator. I'm not sure if he's a senator or a congressman. He just tried to pass a bill. He's just introduced a bill trying to give Congress the power to have to approve tariffs, which I think is ludicrous, by the way. I think it's such a bad idea. Like, why should Congress be able to control economic policy that our president is engaging with other nations on? Like, that's just not what Congress is there to do. They're there to pass laws, not to regulate economic policy. And I'm gonna find the specific question, but I'm gonna give you my thoughts on like how to think about this. Like, and because the lady asked, should we think of this person as like a traitor or a free thinker? Look, I get that right now I'm very aligned with the political right, and some people think of me as a conservative. I mean, I'm a dude with dreads who lives in LA and goes to Burning Man. So I don't know how much of a conservative I really am, but I'm definitely more aligned with the political right than the left. And I think beyond like right left distinctions, I think the thing that actually gets in the way of society more generally is too much identification. And what I mean by that is everyone becomes very attached to identity labels, like Republican or MAGA or right or left. You know, there's actually a very, I thought it was very funny photo that I posted on X today. And it's a photo of a car that I was behind today. And the car had a bunch of stickers. It said, and on the license plate, they had one of those license plate, what do they call it? Frames or holders that says, "I stand with Ukraine." And then on the other side of the car, it says, basically down with the patriarchy. And then on another side of the car, it says Harris Walls 24. And then on another side of the car, it shows "I stand with Ukraine" again. And I see all this stuff. I'm like, okay, I just think it's a bit weird to like put all of your virtues and morals on your car, but okay. But I was like, there's a person who is so caught up with these different labels and their identities that I guarantee you, if I were to talk to them and dispute any of the stuff that they're saying, like "I stand with Ukraine" and Harris Walls, they would get emotionally riled up. And this is not a left thing. This is a human thing. People become very attached to, they find things, identities to like make a crusade out of, like super attached to being Republican or Democrat or white or black or a woman or a man or trans or all of this stuff. And it's like all of these identities get in the way of flexible free thinking. Because when you have any kind of self-concept, like any kind of rigid label, it can influence you to be more interested in being congruent with that label than being congruent with the truth. Because think of it, if you identify as a Trump supporter and then Trump does something that you don't like, it becomes hard for you to speak out and say, "Hey, I don't like this thing that Trump did," because now you've identified with the tribe of Trump supporters. And what do all humans want, irrespective of what the identification is? We all want to belong. We all want to be a part of the tribe. Every single human being. There's not a single human being on the planet who doesn't care what anyone else thinks. Now, people can care about what different groups think more than what other groups think, right? So if you're a Trump supporter, you probably don't care much what a Democrat thinks of you. But I think all identity and labels become traps when we become attached. So when, you know, Mitch McConnell or any of these people, or people call them rhinos, like Republican in name only, when they deviate from the Trump agenda, I'm like, okay, cool. Like they're thinking for themselves. My question is not, is it okay that they deviate? My question is, why are they deviating? Are they deviating because they actually are right and Trump is in the wrong? Or are they deviating because they're just trying to serve their state? And maybe they're doing that at the expense of the overall nation. Are they deviating because they're just trying to get reelected? That's the way I think I want to invite all of you to think about this, rather than, hey, this person's not, they're not one of us. Like, they're not like us. They're not like us. Like, that's not the right way to think about this. So I think everyone, in order to think for yourself, you need to go beyond being part of a tribe, and you need to be more committed to the truth than the tribe. And if you're more committed to the truth than the tribe, then you can think clearly and freely. But the more we engage in tribalism, the less we can have clear thinking, and the more clouds our judgment. And I think you see that. You see that on both sides. Like I think it's very easy, especially when you're someone who, for me, like there's always a temptation to agree with Trump or agree with Elon, right? Because my majority of my audience agrees with Trump and Elon. And I get money off of people watching my videos, right? Like soon I'm going to be introducing sponsorships, and like, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, oh God, like it's scary to speak out. And I like to think that when I disagree, I make it clear. Like there's plenty of videos on my profile where I'm like criticizing the Epstein release or criticizing the way that they're going about deporting these pro-Palestine activists or criticizing the way that Trump handled the California water situation. But honestly, sometimes people view me as like a Trumper or never criticizing these people because literally algorithmically, if I'm critical of Trump to a very pro-Trump audience, literally my post doesn't go viral. So you don't even see it necessarily. That's part of the problem with being trapped in these algorithmic echo chambers. So not only does it make it harder to disagree, even if if you disagree, other people don't even see it. So that's the trap. And ultimately, it's just about having your own principles and standards in your life and knowing that, hey, even if everyone else projects upon you and they don't see what you're doing, you see what you're doing. And ultimately, I prioritize my reputation with myself more than other people's reputation with me or my reputation with other people. So that's the way I think of it. But I really want to find this person's name. So just give me a second here. Might have a moment of awkward silence until I find this post. And I might have to just give up eventually. But hopefully the kind woman who sent me this question, hopefully she she found out that I answered her question somehow. Oh, here it is. Great. Sandra Green. Oh no. Sandra? Okay, Sandra Green. I hope you're here. What I'll probably have to do is let you know afterward that I answered your question. I'm actually going to text her right now. She said, someday would like to hear you discuss how we should assess our representatives / senators when they vote against party lines, Paul, McConnell, etc., free thinkers, troublemakers. Yeah, so I essentially answered the question, but just to answer it more directly, look, ultimately, I think the way to evaluate them is just from first principles. Like, do I think they're doing the right thing? And who do I think they're doing the right thing for? Because ultimately, senators, their responsibility is to represent their state. It's very difficult for a senator to go against the interests of their state, even if that means going with the overall interests of the American people. And Trump's job is to represent the American people, not to represent their state. So, yeah, I also am compassionate for the fact that people have different incentives. And I want to just respect that. Yeah, it might be that Rand Paul or Mitch McConnell, they're trying to serve their own people. And if they don't serve the people of their state, who is? Like, who's going to represent them? And that's how democracy works, right? Like everyone is advocating for their self-interest. And then we have different people at ascending levels of power who are responsible for managing bigger and bigger collectives. And the way it all hashes out is we have civil discourse to meet everyone's need to some extent, but we don't meet anyone's needs completely all the time. So that's the way that I view this. Oh, great. Sandra's here. Hi, Sandra. Hope you felt like that question or the answer was good. All right, we're going to scan to see if there's any more questions from subscribers before we move on. And by the way, so for subscribers, next Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a subscriber only space on X. So look out for that. It's a good chance for me to interact with y'all directly and talk to you and get your perspectives on stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. Okay, one moment here. The next thing we're going to be talking about is Russell Brand and the recent allegations. And it's always a super touchy thing to talk about, right? Because it gets into man and woman and different responsibilities. But I think it's important to talk about because personally, I feel really inspired to talk about these topics because I think it's about deeper issues that face all of humanity. It's not just about like the breaking headlines. So we're going to talk about that in a second. All right, doesn't look like I have any questions on X. Check Instagram. Okay. No questions for now, but of course, again, if you have any questions, I'll give you another opportunity to ask them at the end of the stream. And if you're a subscriber, make sure to go ahead and post that in the thread, ideally. Okay, so what's going on with Russell Brand? Russell Brand is a popular comedian and political cultural commentator who today was hit with an accusation of sexual assault and rape in the UK. And on May 2nd, he's going to be going to London to have to defend himself. And I want to talk about this because this is not just about Russell Brand. It's about the relationship between men and women, masculinity and femininity, and the culture of abusers versus accused. And there's a trend here of men who are aligned with a political right, or at minimum, men who are critical of Western leftist governments, who are rich and famous, consistently getting accused of rape and sexual assault by anonymous women who claim that they engaged in sexual congress with these men 10 or even 20 years ago in Russell's case. And before we get into this, I just want to acknowledge that there's 100% an issue with women getting raped. It's still a problem. It has always been a problem. And it is a responsibility of men and women to address that problem. There is a huge issue with women who actually are victims getting raped and then being afraid to report that rape. Rape is one of the most traumatic experiences that any human can go through. I can't imagine what it's like for a woman to go through that. I totally understand on a human level why a woman wouldn't want to report that. And everything that I'm about to say is compatible with that. I don't want to deny the issues that women face in modernity. And I want to bring attention to the issues that men also face in modernity. Because not only is this personal for me as a man, I don't think this gets much attention. And I think that there's been a lot of movements around modern feminism and the Me Too movement, and women have been getting more elevated and empowered to speak about the things that they deal with as women. And I think it's important for us to also hear about the things that men deal with, because it feels like it's becoming a rite of passage for men who are a threat to the left to get accused of rape at some point in their career. We saw it with Trump. We saw it with Pete Hegseth. We saw it with Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And now we're seeing it with Russell, who over the last few years has gone from being more aligned with the left to being aligned with the right. And what Russell is going through is he's getting accused of 4 charges, including 1 count of rape, 1 count of indecent assault, a count of oral rape, and 2 counts of sexual assault stemming from alleged incidents from the period of 1999 to 2005 involving 4 separate anonymous women. So he's scheduled to appear in London for his first hearing on May 2nd. I don't know if he did it. Okay. It is entirely possible that he has skeletons in his closet and he's now going to get held accountable. And if he did do something bad, good. But let's look at this larger trend of masculine men being accused of rape. Consistently, it's men who are famous, who have money, and who have power. So is it possible that there's some rise of rapists to fame and power? Yeah, that's a possibility. And it's possible that it's not. Because this isn't really about Russell Brand. If he did it, of course he should be punished. But this is about creating a culture of accountability for both men and women. Look, historically, women haven't felt empowered to speak out against abuse by men. And I think that one of the triumphs of the feminist movement is that it helped women become more financially independent so that they don't have to tolerate abusive relationships. And I think it was a triumph of the Me Too movement that it helped genuine victims get heard. And there are side effects. Because we've created a culture where all of the accountability is on the accused and none of it is on the accuser. Where a woman can remain anonymous, risking nothing to her reputation, while the man has everything to lose. Where a woman can accuse a man of rape literally decades later. And I just want to share the position that this puts us in as men. Because look, despite all of this feminist rhetoric, society expects men to lead. And we're expected to lead in romance. We approach the women. We invite the woman on the first date. We initiate the first sexual encounter. We make the marriage proposal. And I don't have any issue with that. I think that's just what masculinity requires of men. And it also means that the man is always in the proactive position, whereas women are in the passive position. And women see from their perspective how scary it is as the more physically vulnerable sex. There's a ton of risk being a woman. They constantly have to be on guard. And there's also risk in intimacy for men. Because what many people don't appreciate is how vulnerable it is as a man to be proactive in romance and sex with women. Because we're the ones taking the risk of action. We are on the offense. Women are on the defense. We are the ones who have to win a woman over through a process of trial and error. We are the ones who have to fear that if we make an error, we will be put on trial. All of the legal risk is on us in sexual situations. All of it. So what power do women and men have in sexual dynamics? Men have the power to abuse and women have the power to accuse. And there are dishonest men and women. There are women who would lie and try to take down a man for money. Pete Hegseth, when he got accused of rape, and allegedly there was surveillance footage of him going with the woman hand in hand, like all hunky-dory, into the hotel room. He paid her $50,000 in settlement, right? There's a financial incentive. And there are women who would abuse that financial incentive. There are women who have low integrity. There are women who would lie just because they don't like a man and don't like his political views. They don't like how he's shifted to the right. And when a man is rich and famous and influential, that incentive is even higher. So here's some examples. You guys remember when Trump was charged with sexual assault? Well, the woman who did that, her name was E. Jean Carroll. And her case was funded by one of the biggest Democratic donors, Reid Hoffman. Why was Reid Hoffman involved in what should have been a personal dispute between Trump and E. Jean Carroll? Maybe Reid is just a good Samaritan helping a damsel in distress. Or it was a political attack with a very high bounty of millions of dollars. $100 million bounty to be specific, actually. And if you actually look into the details of the case, there's a lot of inconsistencies. For one, E. Jean Carroll wore a dress on the cover of New Yorker that she claimed she was wearing when Donald Trump raped her. There's just one problem, though. The time at which she claims that Donald Trump raped her, that dress hadn't even been made. So it was literally impossible. And then there's her behavior afterward, during her press run after she won a verdict that awarded a massive settlement to her. She went on talk shows saying how some women fantasize about rape. She made a joke about how she was going to go on a massive shopping spree and going to bring a television host along with her, Rachel Maddow. So the way that she was behaving certainly was not as a traumatized victim. And maybe that's the way that she deals with her trauma. But there are a lot of inconsistencies in that case. The reason I say this is because there's what happens in the court, and then there's what also happens in the court of public opinion. Because even if the man is exonerated in the court, the public opinion might still be against him. Because here's another example. You remember the Duke lacrosse incident from 2006, where a woman accused several members of a Duke lacrosse team, college men, of raping her? Well, a few months ago, she admitted that she made it all up. I want you to watch this clip.
Ever stunning admission from a woman who accused Duke University lacrosse players of raping her nearly 20 years ago. The story was a national firestorm. She now says she lied about the encounter. Crystal Mangum first made the claims back in 2006, saying 3 members of the school's lacrosse team raped her after she had been hired to dance at a house party the team was throwing. Police charged David Evans, Colin Finnerty, and Reed Seligman after Mangum's accusations. But after much back and forth and the city's DA stepping down from the case, North Carolina's Attorney General later dismissed the charges, citing a lack of evidence. But now, going on the record on a podcast nearly 20 years later, Crystal Mangum says she was lying the whole time.
I testified falsely against them by saying that they raped me when they didn't, and that was wrong. And I betrayed the trust of a lot of other people who believed in me. And made up a story that wasn't true because I wanted validation from people and not from God. I hope that they can forgive me, and I want them to know that I love them and they didn't deserve that.
So she lied about several men and ruined their reputations. For the rest of their lives, anytime someone goes to Google their names, accused of rape will show up. And that's what's going to happen to Russell Brand. Anytime you Google Russell Brand, accused of rape. Now, whether he actually gets charged and proven in the courts of actually raping someone is kind of beyond the point. And especially in this world where so much of our lives is online and so much is about our personal brand. Everyone, you don't even have to be someone on camera. Everyone has a personal brand. And it's etched on the internet forever. This woman accused men of raping her and ruined their reputations. And they had to live with that for the rest of their lives. They have to live with that for the rest of their lives. So why did she lie? I don't know. You know, she's talking about maybe it was an absence of self-worth. Maybe she wanted attention. Maybe she thought she could make money. Maybe she was just taking out some sort of grievance against men or white men, or I don't know. But she lied. Do you understand how terrifying that is as a man? Someone can just lie, ruin your reputation, and have no consequences. And I'll go even further than this. Women are more connected to their emotions than men. That's beautiful. That's one of the reasons that as men, we love women. It connects us to God, actually. And this is also one of the things that makes women better caretakers. Women are also more collectivist and more harmonious by nature. And this makes perfect sense, right? Like, have you ever seen how women will even go to the bathroom together if they're at a nightclub? Well, that's necessary for safety. Women are more reliant on the group for their individual safety because they're physically weaker. So women's ability to be empathetic, to be peacemakers, harmonious, caretake, nurture, those are all strengths. And every strength has an accompanying weakness, because women also tend to be more prone to neuroticism and anxiety than men. Globally, women are about twice as likely as men to be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. In the US, data from the National Institute of Mental Health shows that around 23.4% of women experience an anxiety disorder in the last year, compared to about 14.3% of men in the US. And it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint because women have far more things that they have to worry about on a day-to-day basis that can threaten their literal physical safety, namely half of the human population. Every man is theoretically a threat to a woman, so they constantly have to be watching out, and it totally makes sense how that can manifest in neuroticism and anxiety. And all of that also makes women more susceptible to emotionality and emotional manipulation than men. Women are more likely to have their emotions override their logic. I'm not speaking of every woman. I'm speaking in broad general trends. And what's been going on is this agenda of feminism, radical feminism, this agenda of men are bad, we don't need men, be a boss babe, don't be a stay-at-home mom, that's lame, having children is a death sentence, better have an abortion. All of this is dividing men and women because women and men need each other. We have complementary strengths and weaknesses. And the more we are divided, the more we can be conquered. So women's ability to be emotionally connected is a wonderful gift when empathy is called for. And it is dangerous when clarity is needed. So let me paint a picture for you about what's been going on in society. We have been talking about toxic masculinity for years now. We have been talking about how terrible the patriarchy is for years now. We have been telling women that they don't need men. We have elevated being a career woman at the cost of being a stay-at-home mom. We have somehow made taking care of the next generation of humanity and fully focusing on that something to be looked down upon. And meanwhile, men are being neutered. Sperm counts are dropping. Testosterone levels are too. Women are being told that men are bad, and men have been believing it. So, is it possible that we've been creating a world where women have been conditioned to view men as their enemies? Is it possible that a woman who had sex with a man 20 years ago might take issue with that man's new political beliefs and revise her memory of a consensual act from 2 decades ago? Is it possible that the political opposition in the case of E. Jean Carroll could find a woman who has an axe to grind with his political opponent and say, yeah, you know what? When he was maybe very dominant with you during sex, or when he said that rude thing to you, or didn't treat you in a gentlemanly like fashion, maybe he raped you. Maybe we should get some money from this guy. Maybe we should stick it to him, stick it to the patriarchy. Is it possible that that happens? Of course. Is it possible that a woman who has been conditioned to hate men because she's been told her whole life on social media and in schools that masculinity is evil might view a sexual encounter from years ago instead of being something that she regrets and maybe having been a consensual act with a man that she wishes she hadn't actually opened herself up to as rape? All these things are possible. And that's what's scary. Because increasingly, I see this happening. And increasingly, I see it happening to masculine men who speak their mind, even if it means disapproval from leftist governments or women. Increasingly, I'm seeing this happen to political dissidents. And the timelines increase too. From accusations from 5 years ago to 10 years ago to 20 years ago. I see these accusations becoming more vague and prone to interpretation. I want you to look at this article from the BBC talking about Russell's accusations. Check this out. So look at this article, okay? It's from last year because the accusations were originally from 2023, and he's just getting charged now. It says the actor and comedian has denied allegations of rape, assault, and emotional abuse. What does that mean? Emotional abuse. Is emotional abuse illegal? What is the legal definition of emotional abuse? Emotional abuse can mean anything from a person saying something that another person doesn't like to calling that person horrible names. Emotional abuse can just be having a disagreement with a woman, or it can be genuine psychopathic narcissistic behavior. But these terms, they don't mean anything. These terms are designed to label someone. And you know what the scary thing is? It doesn't even matter if the person has actually done something wrong, because the accusation is the point. And we will see if Russell is charged. And if he actually did something illegal and immoral, he should be. But at this point, it kind of doesn't matter for his reputation, because we've created a culture where the court of public opinion deems that a man is guilty until proven innocent. And the moment you get accused, you lose. You lose business partners, people cut ties, you become toxic to be associated with, to be seen with. Not because people have proof, no, because people are concerned about their reputation being connected with yours. And zooming out from this, who wins here? No one. Women who are actually victims are now harder to believe because of liars who pretend to be victims. Men have to spend their whole lives worried that a man can change her mind about an interaction that they had 20 years ago and take legal action. So what's the solution here? Accountability and responsibility on both sides. False accusers need to be punished just like actual abusers. Women need to report abuse within days of it happening, not decades. Rape is traumatic, and making a serious accusation is a serious responsibility, because rape is hard enough to prove without DNA evidence, and no such evidence exists decades later. And most fundamentally, we, men and women, we got to stop viewing each other as each other's enemies. We got to stop buying into this social agenda that we don't need each other, that we need to be apart, that a good life is spent being single and moving from hookup to hookup and casual encounter to encounter our whole lives. Because there's a fundamental breakdown happening between the sexes. It feels like everything that has gotten humanity to this point in history and it feels like everything that has allowed us to survive for 200,000 years is getting attacked. The nuclear family is being eroded. Long-term relationships are being abandoned. Masculinity is being demonized. The very idea of gender roles is being discarded. Women don't win if men lose. Men don't win if women lose. Men and women need each other. Real equality is not equivalence. We are equal, but we are different, but we are equally responsible. And if we are divided, then divided we will fall. So that's what bothers me about this Russell Brand situation. Because it's not about the data point, it's about the trend. It's about how people react the moment that they hear an accusation. It's about how we tar and feather people, and people can do it from the shadows. It can be an anonymous source who has nothing to lose and much to gain. And we got to stop this, because we're making a world that is unsafe for everyone. And this is why there's so many lonely women and men. You know, people, they talk about this incel movement, involuntarily celibate. And they say, why are all these far right incels popping up? Right? No one ever has compassion for the incels, right? Because as a man, yeah, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be a man who's been celibate for years involuntarily. You think those men feel proud of that? Of course not. They feel embarrassed. They feel pathetic. They feel like there's no one they can even talk to about it. And it's not good for men or women, because then women are wondering, where are the men? Well, we've created a culture where being a man is bad. Masculinity is bad. So why would a boy ever want to be a man? And then boys have all these nonsense ideas about what it is to be a man. You know, sometimes I'll meet men and they'll be more concerned. This happened during the 2024 election. They'll be more concerned about their daughter not being able to abort their future granddaughter than the possibility of World War III, because we're pushing this insane globalist agenda where we're funding a forever war, another forever war in a country that no American can even point out on a map, Ukraine, against Russia, who are supposed to view as our enemy, even though no American could actually identify Russia as our enemy. That's what's happening. Fathers are saying this stuff. And look, you can have whatever view you have on abortion, but if you view abortion as more important than avoiding World War III, your priorities are out of order. And let's talk about the border. Can you imagine in a state of nature when we had tribes of 20 to 50 people just allowing anyone from any other tribe to just enter your land at any point? Some foreign man could just walk into your village at any point, and not only do you not kick him out, you're going to give him health care. You're going to give him Social Security and a job in your community. So men are standing by while borders are just wide open, and we're allowing any other man from a foreign culture that we don't know to enter the country. It's insane. It's insane. And that's what's been happening. Men are being neutered. So it's an attack on masculinity. And if masculinity falls, then women suffer. Women are not safe if there's not real and strong men around. So yeah, it's a deep, deep, deep psychological attack, distortion. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's coming from, honestly. And to speculate here, if I were trying to take down America, I would actually push propaganda that pushes this stuff. I would say, look, we can't actually kill the men like they did in old times, because that's what would happen. When one village invaded another village, you would kill the men because the men stand in the way of the women. The men stand in the way of the resources. You can't really do that anymore, right? We barely even have, increasingly we're going to be doing wars through drones, and we're not even going to have land warfare. So how do you actually defeat the men? You defeat the idea of men. You defeat masculinity itself. You defeat masculinity to the point where biological males aren't even actual men anymore. And you recruit women in this effort. I saw this stat showing that the majority of the group that is most aligned with the Democratic Party right now, despite the Democratic Party going down and down and down in approval ratings, white college educated liberal women. White college educated liberal women. What's going on in colleges? We're being told that everything is subjective. There's no objective truth. Everything is about oppressor versus oppressed. Men are bad. Men should always just do what women tell them to do. Men are not even necessary. We don't even need men. I mean, women are more educated and they're making more money than men. There's not even a glass ceiling anymore. So we're being told, like, you know, casually, women will say, I live in LA. I hear this stuff. Oh, that men are just dogs. So I don't know where this is coming from. Maybe it is actually Russian propaganda or Chinese propaganda. I mean, if I were the KGB or Chinese secret intelligence, I would be like, yeah, upload another TikTok talking about how stupid men are. Make another sitcom about how the dad is fat and dumb and balding and useless. The woman does everything useful. Yeah, keep feeding that into the population while we go win. That's what I would do. So yeah, we got to wake up, because this is an attack. This is an assault on masculinity and the West, and an assault on masculinity is an assault on society itself. And if we don't get a handle on this, and if we don't have some skepticism when we hear of these accusations, a default of skepticism, if we don't hold accusers to the same standard that we hold abusers, we are all going to lose a lot. So now let's check out the chat. I didn't look at the chat the whole time. Maybe now y'all hate me. I'm a misogynist now. I've outed myself. I don't know, but let's see. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think you guys get it, but let's see. American Woman says, as a woman, agree with every word. Thank you. It's nice to hear that as a woman, because frankly, it's scary to talk about this stuff as a man. You know, because I don't want to be the next guy who has a hit piece and some anonymous woman says that I raped her. And like, I think about this stuff all the time. It's honestly scary. You know, I'm single and I still have casual sex. I would like to be married and not have to worry about all this stuff. But like every time I do, I'm like, is this woman one day going to decide, you know what? Fuck this guy. Excuse my French. Fuck this guy. And now he's gaining some status and some acclaim. I'm going to take him down for who knows what reason. Maybe because some other man told her that she should. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And that's not to trivialize what women have to deal with every day. Okay, this is not about comparison. I'm just telling you, as a man, it's terrifying. So it's nice to hear from women who actually love men and see men as their allies that, yeah, this stuff is not okay. Lying is not okay, whether it's a man or a woman. It's equally bad. So thank you. Candy says, I need the masculinity. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I have some female friends who they, it's so funny watching some of their transformations where they'll get into a relationship and all of a sudden their like goals change. And they're like, yeah, you know what? I kind of just want to like cook and clean and raise some kids and not actually go work in a cubicle and have to make my own money. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great deal. And I would love a partner who is focused on cultivating my spiritual life by creating a wonderful household and helping to take care of the kids and doing what she can do better than me as a woman. Like, I think lots of people want that, but for some reason we're being told all of these structures that we used to have and worked really, really well, had some improvements to make, but worked really well because we know that objectively because we made it this far, are bad now. Nonsense. It's ludicrous. So thank you. It means it's like especially nice when I hear from a woman that they resonate with what I'm saying. Aurora Sky says women and men complement each other, and yet we have our own strengths. 100%. 100%. Cordell, I'm going to read your question because you're a subscriber, and we're going to answer it here. Cordell says, how do we restore healthy masculinity in a culture that seems committed to demasculinizing men at every turn? Great question. Let me think about this for a second. How do we do that? All right. Hopefully I don't lose all of y'all, but we're going to talk about Andrew Tate. Because I think a lot of people in the conservative movement don't understand why Andrew Tate is so appealing to so many men. And I'm not saying this as a defense of Andrew Tate. I don't know what he's done in his private life. I'm not even saying that you need to like him. I want to talk about what he represents. For years, we've been told that men are toxic. We've been told that being a man is bad. Women have been told that they don't need men. Okay? As a result, many men felt afraid of speaking up for men at all. And that was happening especially in the late 20-teens and early 2020s. That was a time when Andrew Tate came to fame and prominence because he represented the extreme opposite of this neutered shame, like I'm ashamed of being a man, masculinity's bad behavior. And he is extreme, right? Like he's certainly not someone that we should be elevating in his rhetoric as, oh, this is like how we want all men to talk. But he serves a specific role, which is he's an equal and opposite reaction to the anti-masculinity movement. And for a lot of boys who felt ashamed that they're watching porn and smoking weed and have no direction in their life, he was the only person speaking directly to that demographic. So how do we restore healthy masculinity? If you think Andrew Tate is toxic masculinity, okay, then there needs to be an alternative presented. We need more men who are presenting alternative models of masculinity. There's not one model of masculinity. There shouldn't be one man that every man looks up to. Right? We shouldn't have all the boys looking up to Andrew Tate. That doesn't make any sense. No, we shouldn't have all the boys looking up to Trump. That doesn't make any sense. We need other men showing like, hey, I stand on my principles and my values, and I'm willing to say what's unpopular, and I'm willing to do what I believe is right and good and moral, even if people disagree with me. I'm willing to say things that women might even disapprove of because I care enough about women to keep them safe. We need more men speaking up and standing up. So people who complain about Andrew Tate, it's kind of like when people are complaining about what Trump is doing. It's like, well, what's the alternative? Because we created a world where being an alternative was dangerous. It was dangerous to your brand, your reputation. I mean, look what Trump went through. They tried to cancel him. They tried to convict him. They tried to kill him. What sane man is going to look at that and say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go disagree with the establishment. And the same thing is happening with Tate, right? The guy spent time in prison. They didn't actually charge him with anything, right? These guys had their money seized. They had their reputations ruined. So if you're a man and you look at that, why would you want to speak up and step up? So I think part of it is, here's what I think women can do. I think women can identify, hey, this is what I think is an example of healthy, strong masculinity, and celebrate those men, promote those men, make those men feel like they're not going it alone, because it's scary as a man. Right? And I think women don't recognize how much power they have. Right? The reputation that you have as a man among women, it means a lot because women are half of the population. So I think women can support by saying, yeah, that is an example of a strong, healthy man. I want to see more of that, rather than saying men are toxic and bad and perpetuated everything and patriarchy is bad and down with the patriarchy. That's what we need. So the solution is to provide more solutions rather than just constantly condemning and critiquing and all of that stuff. And in an ideal world, there are tons of different models of masculinity. And what they all have in common is that they have principles, that they follow through on their responsibilities, that they say what they actually believe to be true, that they actually take care of women, they're actually willing to fight and die for their community. That's a good model of masculinity. And I think it's a really great question that you asked that. Okay. Let's keep going here. So thank you for asking, Cordell. I love it when I get questions like that. Hope you guys understand what I'm saying here. Okay. I'm going to check out Instagram chats. Zesty Leah says yes. Hands up. I'm glad you are resonating with what I'm saying, Zesty. Thank you. Let's see what else we got. It's been a fun stream. Cordell says, agreed, real men rise by lifting others. I agree. And look, real men, being a man is, I think, one of the prerogatives of masculinity is you got to stand against something, right? Like if you're defending your tribe, you're standing for your tribe and you're standing against the enemy tribe. These days, I think what would actually be really great. I'm coming up with this take in real time, so don't hold me to it. I think it's important for men to have military service. I never served in the military. And part of me wishes that I had, because I think there's something about having to be in a position where at least you could potentially have to fight and die for your country that makes you really connected with just physical reality and what it actually means to be a man and sacrifice. Because a lot of being a man is sacrificing. A lot of being a man is you're going to sacrifice short-term pain or take short-term pain for long-term gain. And that's what military service wakes you up to, especially if you actually have to serve in combat. And I don't know for certainty, but I imagine the percentage of men who actually do certainly a tour of duty, but at least are even in the military at any point of their life, it's probably a smaller part of the population. And I would wager a guess that in countries where there's a draft or some sort of mandatory service, they have this issue less with the feminization of men. I don't know that for certainty because I know in Korea, they have declining birth rate problems. And it seems like Korea is moving this celebration of feminine men. And they do have mandatory service. So it's not one size fits all. It's not like if we just put men in the military to solve everything. But I think that's part of it. Like, I think we live in such a easy, comfort, soft world where as a man, you kind of have to seek out physical hardship. Like you're not really in a situation where you're physically meeting your limit unless you do it. Like unless you, I don't know, go in the woods for a bit or do a vision quest or go cold plunge or something or sign up for combat sports. And I don't think that's good, because I think part of masculinity is you are in contact with the unforgiving, uncompromising constraints of the physical world, and you do it often. And that keeps you grounded, that keeps you real. And part of the reason that you do that is so that the women don't have to experience that, because you want women to be soft. You don't want women to be coarsened by the harshness of the world. So I think that's part of it. And I don't know what the fundamental solve to that. The best proxy I can think of for that is probably military service. So yeah, I'm curious. What do you think? What do you think, Cordell? You're a subscriber, so I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious your perspective on it, because you're a man too, right? And I don't have all the answers here. All right, guys. I think that's it. We went pretty hard today. What did you guys think? You guys like me talking about this more general big picture stuff? This wasn't really a political headline, but I do want to talk more about like zoomed out trends. And actually, I'm really passionate about the declining birth rate. I think it's a huge existential problem. I want to talk about that. And honestly, I'm trying to build a career here, and there's a balance that I try to strike, because it's so easy to talk about the thing that's happening in the day, because that's what's viral, that's what's hot, that's what gets clicks, and clicks, they drive sponsors, that drives money. And I do need to talk about that to some extent, but I also think that I have a lot of useful commentary I can provide on bigger trends. So yeah, I'm just curious, did you guys like me talking about this more big picture masculinity, femininity stuff? Because I think that's important. There's always a balance between urgent and important. Sometimes what's urgent is not actually the most important thing. So yeah, just let me know in the chat. What did you think? Especially if you got to listen from the beginning to me talking about Russell Brand. C says, agreed to needing military service. Cool. Yeah, I think that could help. Thank you, Colleen. I appreciate that. Thank you, Aurora. Yeah, I just had to get all this off my chest. I'm glad that people are open-minded and receptive. And as we wind things down here, I think that we live in such a confused world where, maybe this is why some people are calling me conservative, and I don't even view it that way. It's like a lot of what we used to do worked really well. And the reason we know that is because civilization is still intact. And even though there's a lot of things that are falling apart, there's a lot more that's not. Okay. We have more people on the planet. We have more peace on the planet, even though the wars are horrible and amplified. There's a lot less killing and violence on the planet than there was 500, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 years ago. So there's a lot that's working, and there's basic structures like the family and some sort of spiritual connection to something higher than yourself. Doesn't need to be Christianity or whatever, just something. And gender roles, like there's a lot of stuff that just worked really well, and we know that because empirically it stood the test of time. But it feels like we're just discarding, and we're calling oppressive, and we're calling bad, and we're not being thoughtful. And do we need to evolve systems sometimes? Of course we do. But we also don't want to be so reactionary that we treat everything that is old as bad and everything that's new as good, and seeking novelty for novelty's sake. And I feel very connected to this because, I do think that the left has left me as someone who used to be a Democrat. I also think that I've matured, and I think that, my views are evolving, and I think I'm genuinely more aligned with conservative values than I used to be. But I think there's also other areas that you could probably just consider me a liberal. Like, yes, I very much care about the environment. And not that conservatives don't, but yeah, I definitely think that we need to actually make that like a bigger priority. I think we should actually strive for universal healthcare. I just think that the way that the left has tried to do that just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think it's something we should strive for, though. But it feels like just rational, common sense positions that used to not be that controversial are being labeled as far right, and it's silly. And it's causing us to be far more divided, far more hostile than we need to be. It's causing people to feel like, yeah, like they're being labeled for just saying, yeah, men and women need each other, and having babies is good, and having nuclear families is good, and no having a how many abortions do we have a year in this country? I think it's over 1 million now abortions a year. Like, look, I don't want. I mean, I honestly don't even know. Like, I get how women need the ability to make decisions for themselves, but the majority of abortions are elective abortions. It's not because of rape. It's not because of incest. It's literally because a woman just chose to not bring a child into the world. That's an epidemic. That's a problem. So even if we can't agree on being pro-life versus pro-choice, at least we can be pro-choosing life at minimum. But instead, it almost feels like abortion is being used as a form of birth control and it's getting celebrated. There's something very deeply mentally ill about what's going on in this country, and we need to start calling it out as mental sickness. And I don't mean like sick as a diatribe or insult. I mean genuine, like we need to treat this like we would a sick person, which is with concern. And are you okay? Are you okay? Like, I see all these women in LA with like fake everything, fake boobs, fake butt, fake lips, fake face. And it's like, look, pick whatever avatar helps you to love yourself and feel beautiful. Like, Lord knows, like, I have insecurities and things that I've done to try to feel worthy and try to look good. Like, no judgment. And I don't think there's enough curiosity as like, where is this coming from? Same thing with a lot of the trans stuff. Like, I think a lot of this has become a culture war that I'm frankly just really tired of. A lot of the trans stuff, but you look at it and it's like, is this healthy? Like, is it healthy that the rates of transgender surgery are going up over time? Like, do we think that's really freedom, or is it the freedom to be confused and act upon it? So what I think we can do to have a more rational conversation is just to calm down, not be so heated, not so quick to attack each other, and get curious about not just what's happening, but why is it happening? Where is it coming from? And how can we help people feel mentally and emotionally and physically healthy so that they were not driven to change everything about our natural human state? I would love it if we could get there. I think that's a worthy goal. Thank you everyone for watching. It's been a fun week of broadcasting. This actually might be my favorite thing that I do, talking to you guys live. It's interesting because I'm so much more smooth. I think there's something about being with you guys present live that's so much easier than recording edited content where I stutter and have to do several takes. Because you guys see a 2-minute video, it can take me like 4 to 5 hours to make those videos because I try to get every word perfect. So thanks for being here with me and sharing the space and sharing this time. And as usual, I just want to remind everyone, all of this stuff is important, but it's not nearly as important as your personal relationships. So tend to those, tend to your life, tend to each other. Have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific time for Nuance Live. Going to be dropping videos tomorrow and Sunday, so let me know how you like them. Thank you again to all the subscribers who are supporting me with your time and your energy. Let me know how I can make your subscription worth it, and let me know other things that you would like to see me comment on. Have a great weekend, and bye-bye.